Karen had always dreamed of visiting London. She had seen it in movies, on television, and in countless travel magazines. But now she was finally here, walking on the same streets that countless tourists and locals had walked before her. The city buzzed with life, the sounds of double-decker buses, chattering people, and street performers blending into a lively symphony. Karen felt a sense of excitement she had never felt before. Every corner she turned seemed to hold a new adventure, a new story waiting to be discovered. She had planned her day carefully, and at the top of her list was Buckingham Palace. She had heard about the changing of the guard ceremony and had imagined it countless times in her mind: soldiers in bright red uniforms, tall black hats, and the perfect, synchronized march. Now, standing outside the palace gates, she could see everything coming to life before her eyes. The crowd around her was a mix of tourists from all over the world. Some were taking photos, others were chatting excitedly, and a few were simply standing in awe. Karen adjusted her camera, making sure it was ready to capture every moment. The air smelled faintly of flowers from the nearby gardens, mixed with the scent of freshly baked pastries from a nearby cafe. She could hear the distant sound of marching feet approaching, and the excitement in the crowd grew louder. People began murmuring and pointing toward the palace gates, signaling that the ceremony was about to begin. Karen felt a shiver of anticipation. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. As the guards appeared, Karen's eyes widened. They were even more impressive than she had imagined. Their bright red coats gleamed in the sunlight, and the tall bearskin hats made them look larger than life. The precision with which they moved was mesmerizing. Each step was perfectly in sync, each turn executed flawlessly. Karen felt as if she had stepped into a living history book. She watched as the lead guard raised his sword and signaled the start of the march. The rhythmic sound of their boots hitting the pavement echoed through the plaza, creating a beat that seemed almost magical. Karen could feel the energy in the air, a mixture of discipline, tradition, and pride. As the guards continued their march, Karen slowly edged closer, trying to get the perfect shot with her camera. She wanted to capture the moment, to preserve it forever in her memories and photos. She adjusted her phone, trying different angles, sometimes crouching, sometimes standing on her tiptoes. Every few seconds, she glanced at the crowd around her, noticing the wide-eyed expressions of fellow tourists. Some were whispering in awe, others were pointing and smiling. Karen felt a thrill of excitement. She loved being part of this shared experience, feeling the history and tradition that surrounded her. Karen didn't notice the subtle rules that governed the guards' movements. She had heard that the soldiers were disciplined, but she didn't fully understand what that meant. To her, they seemed like performers in a grand show, part of the spectacle of London life. She moved a little closer, thinking she could get an even better view if she positioned herself directly in the path of the march. She didn't see any barriers, and in her mind, she believed it was safe. Her focus was entirely on capturing the perfect photograph. She didn't notice the small signs, the subtle instructions from nearby palace officials, or the occasional glances of warning from experienced tourists who understood the seriousness of standing too close. The lead guard came closer, his eyes focused straight ahead, his expression calm and unwavering. Karen could see the strength in his posture, the discipline in every movement. She felt a thrill at being so close to someone who represented such tradition and authority. The crowd seemed to part slightly as the guards moved, creating a narrow path that Karen instinctively moved into, thinking it would give her the best view. She raised her phone, ready to snap the perfect picture, completely unaware that she was stepping into a space that was not meant for tourists. Around her, the atmosphere was electric. Tourists were whispering and pointing, some noticing her proximity to the marching guard, others too engrossed in their own photos to pay attention. Street vendors continued to sell souvenirs, and the sound of cameras clicking filled the air. Karen was lost in her own excitement, imagining the photos she would share with her friends and family. She was also imagining the stories she would tell when she returned home, how she had been so close to the royal guards, witnessing history firsthand. The pride she felt in that moment made her heart race with excitement. As the guards marched closer, Karen finally realized how close she had gotten. She could see the details of the lead guard's uniform, the polished buttons, the crisp folds, the shine of the boots. She felt a mix of awe and nervousness. The guard's presence was imposing, and Karen suddenly understood that these were not just performers, they were highly trained soldiers carrying out a centuries-old tradition. Her excitement mixed with a small twinge of fear, a realization that she might have gotten too close. Yet, her curiosity and desire for the perfect photo kept her rooted in place. She didn't want to move too soon and miss the moment. The crowd around her was a living, moving entity, each person reacting in their own way. Some clapped quietly, some took photos, and some whispered to each other, pointing toward Karen. She could feel the tension in the air, even if she didn't fully understand its source. The rhythmic sound of the guard's boots grew louder, each step resonating in her chest. Karen's anticipation built with every second, her mind racing with possibilities and the perfect angle for her shot. She felt completely immersed in the moment, as if she were part of a grand play that had been rehearsed for centuries. Karen took a deep breath, steadying her hands as she raised her phone to capture the scene. She felt a sense of pride in her ability to capture such a historic moment. The sun reflected off the red coats of the guards, casting a brilliant glow over the plaza. She adjusted her focus, trying to ensure that every detail, the hats, the swords, the synchronized march, was perfectly captured. The excitement of being so close, combined with the thrill of witnessing tradition in its purest form, made her heart pound with joy. Little did Karen know, she was about to learn a lesson she would never forget. The calm excitement, the beauty of the moment, and the thrill of witnessing history were all about to collide with an unexpected reality. The Royal Guards were not just part of a show, they were disciplined soldiers, trained to maintain their path, no matter what. Karen's excitement and curiosity, which had brought her so close, were about to put her in a situation she could never have imagined. But in that moment, standing in the sunlit plaza, surrounded by the crowd and the sound of marching boots, Karen was completely unaware of what was about to happen. The first part of her story ended with the perfect sense of anticipation, the calm before the storm. She felt alive, connected to history, and part of a moment that would stay with her forever. The grandeur of Buckingham Palace, the precision of the Royal Guards, and the shared excitement of the crowd had created a scene that was unforgettable. Karen smiled to herself, ready to capture every detail, completely unaware that the real adventure was about to begin. Karen had been so focused on capturing the perfect photo that she didn't realize just how close she had moved toward the line of marching Royal Guards. She adjusted her phone one last time, crouching slightly to frame the lead guard in the center of her shot. The sound of synchronized footsteps grew louder with every passing second, each stomp echoing through the plaza. It was hypnotic, almost like a drumbeat that pulsed through the air and into her chest. She felt a thrill unlike anything she had experienced before. Here she was, standing almost face to face with living history, and nothing could have made her feel more alive. The crowd around her began to stir in a mix of awe and concern. Some people nudged each other, whispering warnings that Karen, lost in her excitement, didn't hear. Others held up their phones to capture the scene, unaware of the tension building in the small space near the guard's path. Karen, completely absorbed in her photography, failed to notice the slight narrowing of the crowd, which was now directing her closer to the path where the guards would march. Her attention was locked on the red coat of the lead soldier, the glint of the sword in his hand, and the perfection of the disciplined steps. It was a beautiful, mesmerizing sight, and she didn't want to miss a single detail. As the lead guard drew nearer, Karen's excitement began to mix with a small pang of nervousness. The soldier's face was expressionless, his eyes fixed straight ahead, and his movements were perfectly measured. There was no hesitation, no deviation from the path he was following. Karen instinctively took a step closer, thinking that if she got just a little nearer, she could capture the guard in full stride, every detail clear in her photo. She didn't notice that her step was taking her directly into the path of a highly trained soldier whose focus was absolute. The guard's boots struck the pavement in a rhythm that seemed almost unstoppable. Karen felt the vibration through the soles of her shoes. The sound echoed in her ears, and seemed to sync with the racing of her own heart. For a moment, she imagined herself stepping aside, in perfect timing, thinking she could move out of the way at the last second. She had always considered herself quick and alert, able to handle unexpected situations, but standing here, inches from someone whose training demanded complete discipline and unwavering focus, she was about to discover that her assumptions might not hold true. Around her, the crowd's energy began to shift. Some tourists noticed how close Karen had gotten to the marching guard and began whispering urgent warnings. A few voices called out, telling her to step back. But the din of the crowd and the rhythmic stomping of boots drowned out their words. Karen, however, did not hear the cautions. She was too focused on her photography, imagining the perfect moment frozen in her camera. Unaware that she was standing in a space that required not just respect, but careful attention. The lead guard came closer with every step. Karen could see the polished boots, the sharp lines of the uniform, and the glint of the sword held tightly in the soldier's hand. She realized, almost too late, that she was standing exactly in the path where the guard would pass. Panic began to creep into her mind, but it was mixed with disbelief. How could this be happening? She had not intended to block anyone. She was just trying to capture a moment she had dreamed about for years. Yet, here she was, frozen in the path of someone who could not, by the rules of his duty, stop or deviate. The seconds stretched out, each one filled with tension. Karen's hands shook slightly as she held her phone, unsure whether to move or stay. Her mind raced with thoughts. Step aside. No. Wait. He'll notice. I'm too close. What if? Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, louder than the sound of the marching boots. She could feel the eyes of other tourists on her, some full of concern, others filled with curiosity or even amusement. Karen knew she had made a mistake, but she hadn't yet grasped the seriousness of the situation. The guard's expression remained completely unchanged. His eyes were locked straight ahead, his jaw firm, and his posture perfect. He did not flinch, slow down, or adjust his step. Karen, suddenly realizing that he would not change his path, froze completely. Her feet felt heavy, rooted to the ground, as if the plaza itself had gripped her in place. The realization hit her like a bolt of lightning. She was standing directly in the way of a highly disciplined soldier, whose duty demanded absolute focus. The excitement she had felt moments before transformed into a mixture of fear and awe. The crowd began to murmur louder. Some people gasped, some laughed nervously, and a few took out their phones to record the moment. Karen felt the heat rise to her face, a flush of embarrassment mingling with adrenaline. Her heart raced so fast it felt as though it might burst from her chest. She tried to take a careful step backward, but the crowd pressed in, leaving her little room to move. The panic in her mind collided with the instinct to survive, creating a strange mix of emotions that left her temporarily paralyzed. Nearby, a few palace officials noticed the situation and began moving toward Karen. Their expressions were calm but purposeful, a clear sign that they were trained to handle these types of incidents. Karen, however, was so caught up in her own thoughts that she barely noticed them approaching. She could hear faint voices calling out instructions, but the combination of her rapid heartbeat, the pounding boots, and the excited chatter of the crowd made it hard to focus. For a moment, it seemed like time itself had slowed, stretching the seconds into what felt like an eternity. The lead guard was now almost upon her. Karen could see the perfect alignment of the soldiers behind him, each step echoing like a metronome. She realized that this was not just a ceremonial march. It was a display of precision, discipline, and centuries of tradition. Every movement had meaning. Every step was calculated. And every soldier was trained to follow orders without hesitation. Karen's admiration grew, even as her fear increased. She could not believe how impressive it was, but at the same time, she could not believe how vulnerable she was standing directly in the path. Karen's mind raced with possible ways to get out of the situation. She considered stepping to the side quickly, crouching down, or even pretending to be part of the crowd. Each idea seemed more impossible than the last. She could feel her hands trembling as she gripped her phone tightly, the device suddenly feeling heavy in her hands. The crowd pressed around her, and she realized that moving was more difficult than she had imagined. Every instinct told her to step back, but the tight space and the eyes of the tourists on her made it harder to act. Then, as if sensing the growing tension, a small voice behind her whispered urgently, "Step back! Step back!" Karen turned slightly and saw a fellow tourist gesturing frantically. She nodded quickly, finally understanding the danger. She tried to move, but her foot caught on the uneven pavement, causing her to stumble slightly. The lead guard was now just a few steps away, and Karen's adrenaline reached a peak she had never felt before. Every nerve in her body screamed at her to move, and every fiber of her being was focused on one thought: survive this encounter. In that tense, surreal moment, Karen came to understand the reality of her situation. She had underestimated the seriousness of the ceremonial duty, overestimated her own ability to navigate the crowd, and underestimated the focus and training of the royal guards. It was a mix of awe, fear, and embarrassment that made her heart pound so fast she could hardly breathe. Yet even in that fear, she felt a strange thrill, a sense that she was experiencing something extraordinary, something that very few people ever truly understood. The guard, unwavering, continued his march. Karen froze completely, her body rigid as the seconds ticked by. The palace officials were now closer, ready to guide her to safety. And the murmuring crowd grew louder, some offering encouragement, others quietly observing in amazement. Karen's mind raced through every possible scenario, wondering if she had just made the worst mistake of her life. And then, in that split second, she realized that the moment she feared the most was about to arrive. Karen stood frozen, her heart hammering in her chest. The lead royal guard was now just a few feet away, his tall, imposing figure moving steadily toward her without a hint of hesitation. For a moment, the bustling sounds of the crowd, the distant city traffic, and even the rhythmic pounding of boots seemed to fade into silence. It was as if time itself had slowed down, leaving her and the guard alone in a tense, surreal bubble. She could feel the collective gaze of the tourists around her, some shocked, some amused, and some entirely focused on the impending encounter. Every eye seemed to add weight to the situation, making her feel more exposed and vulnerable than she had ever felt before. The guard's expression remained perfectly neutral, his eyes fixed straight ahead, seemingly unaware of the woman standing directly in his path. His boots struck the pavement with the same unwavering rhythm, each step echoing loudly, almost like a drumbeat, resonating in Karen's chest. She could see every detail of his uniform: the shiny black boots, the crisp red coat, the perfectly polished buttons, and the tall bearskin hat that made him appear even taller than he already was. Every element of his appearance screamed discipline, precision, and absolute control. Karen felt a shiver run down her spine, a mixture of fear and awe. Around her, the crowd began to react. Whispers grew louder, some turning into quiet gasps. A few people were recording the moment on their phones, while others simply watched, frozen by curiosity and anticipation. Karen noticed some tourists nudging her, trying to get her attention, but she was so caught up in the moment that she barely registered their warnings. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her phone, realizing that she was inches away from someone who could not and would not change his path. The reality of the situation began to sink in. She had made a serious mistake, and she could not simply rely on luck to get out unscathed. For the first time, Karen felt a true sense of fear. It wasn't just the fear of embarrassment, or the fear of making a scene in front of the crowd. It was the fear of the unexpected consequences of her actions. She knew, intellectually, that the royal guards were trained to be disciplined, that they were not performers or actors who could simply stop for a tourist. Yet her previous assumptions had blinded her to this reality. Now, facing the lead guard head-on, she realized the gravity of what she had done. Each step he took was deliberate, each movement a testament to centuries of training and tradition. Karen's mind raced with thoughts of what she should do next. She considered stepping aside quickly, but the crowd pressed in around her, limiting her movements. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to retreat, to remove herself from the path immediately. But there was no clear way to do so without stumbling or bumping into someone. Her eyes darted around, searching for an opening, but the narrow space and the tight formation of tourists left her feeling trapped. The tension in her chest grew heavier with every passing second. She could feel the eyes of the crowd burning into her, and the weight of her own mistake pressed down like a heavy stone. The lead guard continued his approach, his posture flawless and unyielding. Karen could see the fine details of his uniform, the precision of every stitch, and the gleam of his sword, which reflected the sunlight in sharp flashes. She realized that this was more than a ceremonial performance. It was a living display of discipline, pride, and unwavering duty. The thought made her heart race faster, and she felt a deep respect mingled with her fear. She was witnessing something extraordinary, yet she was right in the middle of it, threatening to disrupt it with a single wrong move. Karen's mind tried to calculate every possible action. Step back? Too slow. Duck down? Too risky with the crowd pressing in. Stay frozen? Dangerous. Every option seemed flawed, every decision filled with potential consequences. She could feel sweat forming on her forehead, her palms growing clammy as adrenaline coursed through her veins. Her entire body was alert, hyper-aware of the guard, the crowd, and the rhythm of the march. It was as if her senses had heightened to an almost unbearable level, making every sound, movement, and glance feel magnified. The crowd around her continued to react. Some tourists whispered urgently, waving their arms to get her attention. Others recorded the scene, perhaps sensing that they were witnessing a rare and dramatic moment. A few children pointed and giggled, not fully understanding the seriousness of the situation but sensing the tension nonetheless. Karen caught sight of a palace official moving toward her, their face calm but serious, clearly trained to handle these situations. The official was signaling for her to step aside, but the combination of nerves, adrenaline, and crowd pressure made it difficult for Karen to move immediately. Every second felt like an eternity. Karen could feel the pounding of her heart, the quick intake of her breath, and the trembling in her legs. She had never felt fear and excitement so intensely combined. The lead guard was now just a step or two away. Karen could see the perfectly polished surface of his boots approaching, and she realized fully that there would be no sudden stop, no last-minute swerve. He would maintain his path no matter what, and the responsibility to move safely fell entirely on her. She felt a mix of panic and awe, understanding for the first time the absolute focus and commitment of the royal guards. Then, something extraordinary happened. For a brief moment, Karen noticed a subtle hesitation not in the guard, but in the space around her. The crowd, sensing the approaching climax of the encounter, seemed to collectively hold its breath. The air was thick with anticipation, a mixture of excitement, fear, and curiosity. Karen felt her heart leap into her throat. She realized that this was a defining moment not just for the crowd, but for herself. She could either panic completely or find a way to navigate the situation with composure. Karen tried to steady her breathing, forcing herself to take a slow, careful step backward. Her foot pressed against the uneven pavement, causing her to stumble slightly. She quickly regained her balance, her eyes never leaving the guard. Every detail seemed magnified: the click of his boots, the sway of his hat, the glint of his sword. She felt a strange admiration for the soldier's unwavering focus. Even as her own fear reached its peak, the tension in the air was almost tangible, like a rope stretched tight to its breaking point. The palace official finally reached her, placing a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder and guiding her slightly to the side. Karen felt a wave of relief mixed with embarrassment. She had made a mistake, but she was still safe. The crowd began to relax slightly, whispers of relief spreading as the guard continued his march without interruption. Karen felt her body slowly release the tension that had held her rigid for so long. She could hardly believe what had just happened. She had been inches away from a highly disciplined soldier, and she had survived the encounter without incident. As Karen caught her breath, she looked back at the guard, who continued his march as if nothing had happened. His expression remained neutral, his eyes fixed ahead, and his posture perfect. It was as if the moment with her had been nothing more than a minor blip in an otherwise flawless routine. Karen felt a mixture of awe and respect. She realized that this was not just a performance, but a demonstration of centuries of training, discipline, and pride. She had glimpsed a world she had never fully understood, and the encounter had left a lasting impression on her. The crowd slowly began to disperse, returning to their own activities, though many still glanced back at the spectacle they had witnessed. Karen adjusted her phone, taking a few tentative photos from a safer distance. She smiled nervously, realizing that she now had a story she would never forget. The adrenaline was still coursing through her hands still slightly trembling, but she felt a newfound respect for the traditions she had come to observe. The royal guards had maintained their dignity, discipline, and focus, and she had learned a lesson in humility and awareness that she would carry with her forever. Karen's thoughts raced as she reflected on the experience. She realized how easily a moment of excitement and distraction could turn into a potentially dangerous situation. She had learned the importance of respecting boundaries, even in moments of curiosity and wonder. She had also gained a deeper appreciation for the skill, dedication, and training of the royal guards, whose professionalism had prevented a potentially harmful incident. Karen knew that this encounter would stay with her, a reminder of both her own impulsiveness and the remarkable precision of the soldiers she had come to admire. As she stepped back further into the safety of the crowd, Karen felt her heartbeat slowly return to normal. She watched the rest of the guards' formation march by, each step precise, each movement disciplined, and each soldier a testament to centuries of tradition. The experience had been both terrifying and awe-inspiring, leaving her with a mix of emotions she had never expected. She knew that she had been lucky, but she also knew that this encounter had given her a new perspective on patience, awareness, and the importance of respecting others, even in moments of excitement and curiosity. Karen finally managed to step back into a safer position, her heart still racing from the intense encounter with the lead royal guard. She could hardly believe what had just happened. For a few moments, she had been frozen in place, just inches from someone whose focus and discipline were unmatched. The adrenaline was still coursing through her veins, leaving her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted her phone and tried to regain her composure. Every detail of the guard's precise movements replayed in her mind: the polished boots, the flawless red coat, the tall bearskin hat, and the unwavering gaze. She realized that what she had witnessed was not merely a performance. It was a living tradition, one that demanded respect and careful attention. As she took a slow, deep breath, Karen began to process the gravity of the situation. She had been so caught up in excitement and curiosity that she had failed to notice the boundaries and rules that governed the ceremony. The lesson hit her like a sudden wave. The royal guards were not actors or entertainers. They were highly trained soldiers, and their discipline was absolute. Even a small misstep could have caused a serious incident. The thought made her shiver. Not out of fear alone, but out of a newfound respect for the precision and dedication required for such a role. She felt embarrassed, yet grateful that she had walked away unharmed. Around her, the crowd began to shift as the ceremony continued. Tourists whispered to each other, some sharing laughs, others commenting on the tension they had just witnessed. A few people turned their cameras toward her, capturing her reaction as she slowly stepped aside. Karen felt a mix of self-consciousness and amusement. She realized that she had become part of the story, an unexpected participant in a historic moment. The palace officials and soldiers continued their duties calmly, showing no hint of frustration, maintaining the dignity and composure that made the ceremony so impressive. Karen couldn't help but admire their professionalism. The palace official who had guided her to safety gave her a gentle, reassuring nod. "Please be careful," the official said quietly but firmly. "The guards cannot stop. You must always stay behind the line." Karen nodded, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and relief. She had never considered how strict the rules were, and now she understood the importance of following them. The official moved on to ensure that no other tourists were at risk, leaving Karen to reflect on the encounter and the lesson it had taught her. She realized that her actions, though unintentional, had disrupted a centuries-old tradition, even if only for a brief moment. Karen's mind replayed the sequence of events over and over. She remembered the rhythmic pounding of the boots, the unflinching expression of the guard, and the surreal feeling of facing someone so disciplined without the ability to influence their path. She recalled how the crowd had reacted, the gasps, the whispers, the laughter, and how the palace officials had intervened just in time. Each detail reinforced the gravity of what had happened, and she began to feel a deep appreciation for the balance between tradition and public interaction. She realized that witnessing history in action was both a privilege and a responsibility. After regaining her composure, Karen stepped back further to observe the remainder of the ceremony from a safe distance. She watched as the other guards continued their precise movements, their boots striking the pavement in perfect synchronization. The formation shifted and turned with incredible coordination, and Karen found herself captivated by the elegance and discipline of the entire procession. She could feel the pride and dedication radiating from each soldier, and she understood for the first time the years of training and commitment required to perform such duties flawlessly. Her earlier fear transformed into admiration, and she felt humbled by the experience. Karen began to take photos again, this time keeping a respectful distance. Each click of her camera captured the beauty of the ceremony, the bright red coats, the synchronized steps, and the proud, stoic expressions of the guards. She also took photos of the crowd, capturing the expressions of awe, curiosity, and amusement that had characterized the event. As she reviewed the images, she realized that the story she now had was not just about the guards, but also about herself, her excitement, and the moment she had unintentionally become part of history. It was a story of curiosity, mistake, and realization, and she felt grateful for the lessons it had taught her. As the ceremony drew to a close, Karen noticed the smiles and laughter that spread among the tourists. People discussed the event animatedly, sharing their experiences and pointing out moments that had impressed or surprised them. Karen joined in the conversations, recounting her own close encounter with the lead guard. She did so with humor, acknowledging her mistake while emphasizing the awe-inspiring precision of the soldiers. Her story quickly captured the attention of those around her, and she felt a sense of connection with fellow tourists who had witnessed the spectacle. The embarrassment she had felt earlier slowly turned into a memorable, even funny, part of her trip. Walking away from the main plaza, Karen reflected on what she had learned. She understood that curiosity and excitement were natural, but they needed to be balanced with awareness and respect for rules, especially when interacting with traditions that carried centuries of history. She realized that the guards' unwavering discipline was not meant to intimidate or exclude tourists, but to preserve the dignity and significance of the ceremony. Karen felt grateful for having experienced the event firsthand, but she also felt a renewed sense of responsibility to act thoughtfully and respectfully in such situations. Karen's encounter with the guard became the highlight of her visit. She shared the story with friends and family later, not to boast, but to illustrate the lesson she had learned about awareness, respect, and the unexpected thrill of real-life experiences. The story spread quickly, eliciting laughter, surprise, and admiration from those who heard it. She explained how she had stepped into the guard's path, frozen in disbelief, and how she had been guided safely back into the crowd. Her honesty and humor made the story even more engaging, and she realized that her moment of panic had transformed into a valuable life lesson. The more Karen thought about the encounter, the more she appreciated the significance of the royal guards. She understood that their precision, discipline, and dedication were not just for show. They were a symbol of tradition, respect, and the enduring history of Buckingham Palace. The guards' unwavering focus had prevented a potentially dangerous situation, and Karen felt deep admiration for their professionalism. She realized that her close call had given her insight into a world she might never have understood otherwise. It was an experience that combined fear, excitement, and respect in a way that left a lasting impression on her. As she walked away from the palace, Karen couldn't help but smile. She had learned a valuable lesson about patience, observation, and respect, all while witnessing one of the most iconic ceremonies in the world. The memory of standing so close to the lead guard, feeling the power of his disciplined march, and realizing the seriousness of her mistake, remained vivid in her mind. Yet she also remembered the relief and admiration she felt afterward, and the laughter that followed as she recounted the story to those around her. It was a moment of growth, awareness, and unforgettable experience, all rolled into one. Karen knew that this encounter would remain with her forever. It was more than just a funny or embarrassing story. It was a reminder of the importance of awareness, respect, and the unexpected lessons that travel and curiosity can bring. She felt a deep appreciation for the balance between human curiosity and the rules that maintain tradition. And she promised herself that in future encounters, she would act with the same thoughtfulness and respect she had learned today. The royal guards had unknowingly given her a lesson that extended far beyond the ceremony itself, a lesson in patience, humility, and appreciation for history. Even as the crowd dispersed and the plaza returned to its usual rhythm, Karen felt the lingering impact of the experience. She reflected on her initial excitement, the tension and fear she had felt when standing in the guard's path, and the relief and admiration she experienced afterward. Every emotion had contributed to a story that was both personal and universal, a story of curiosity, mistake, and growth. She smiled to herself, knowing that she had not only witnessed history, but had become a part of it in her own unexpected way. Karen left Buckingham Palace that day with a sense of accomplishment and humility. She had experienced a once-in-a-lifetime moment, learned an invaluable lesson, and gained a deeper understanding of the traditions she had come to admire. The story of her encounter with the lead guard would stay with her forever, reminding her of the thrill, the fear, and the awe that come from stepping into history, even by accident. It was a story of respect, curiosity, and personal growth, a story that Karen knew she would cherish for the rest of her life. After the excitement and tension of the guard encounter, Karen felt a mixture of relief, pride, and lingering nervousness. She walked slowly away from the main plaza, taking in the sights and sounds of London once more. The city seemed to pulse with life around her, but she now noticed details she hadn't before: the chatter of tourists, the ringing of distant church bells, and the aroma of fresh bread and coffee from nearby cafes. Every step felt more deliberate, as if she were savoring each moment after the adrenaline rush she had just experienced. The lesson from the encounter lingered in her mind. Curiosity and excitement are wonderful, but they must always be balanced with awareness and respect for rules and traditions. Karen found a small bench slightly away from the crowd and sat down, her hands still trembling slightly as she adjusted her camera. She looked around at the tourists walking past, many of them chatting and laughing, carrying souvenirs and photos from their visit. She smiled to herself, reflecting on how the encounter had started with excitement and had quickly escalated into tension and fear, only to end with relief and understanding. In that moment, she felt grateful. She had not only witnessed a remarkable ceremony but had also learned an unexpected life lesson about respect, patience, and the importance of staying aware of her surroundings. As she rested, Karen began to replay the entire sequence of events in her mind. From the moment she had arrived at Buckingham Palace, full of excitement and anticipation, to the split second when she had stepped into the guard's path, every detail seemed vivid and clear. She remembered the rhythmic sound of the boots, the glint of the guard's sword, and the tall, stoic figure that had made her freeze in place. The crowd's reactions, the whispers of concern, and the quick intervention of the palace officials all felt like parts of a story she could never forget. It was a story that combined humor, tension, and awe, a story she knew she would share with friends and family for years to come. Karen realized that the encounter had taught her more than she could have anticipated. She had learned that traditions are not just for show; they carry meaning, history, and a sense of responsibility that must be respected. The royal guards were not simply performing. They were upholding a centuries-old ceremony that symbolized discipline, pride, and dedication. She felt a deep admiration for their unwavering focus and professionalism. Even in moments when unexpected situations arose, they maintained their composure and carried out their duties flawlessly. Karen knew that her close call had given her a unique glimpse into a world most tourists only observed from a distance. As she continued to reflect, Karen thought about how she would tell this story to others. She knew it could be told humorously, highlighting her near mistake and the fear she had felt, but she also wanted to convey the respect and admiration she had gained for the guards. She considered writing a blog post or sharing her photos online, not just to entertain, but to provide a lesson for other travelers about curiosity, awareness, and the importance of respecting boundaries. She realized that personal experiences like hers are often the most memorable and meaningful stories, especially when they combine adventure, learning, and a touch of unpredictability. Karen decided to take a few more photos from a safe distance, capturing the remaining moments of the ceremony and the grandeur of Buckingham Palace. She observed the crowd, noticing how people reacted differently to the guards' movements. Some clapped quietly, some filmed, and some simply watched in awe. Karen appreciated how each person's experience added to the richness of the event. She felt a sense of connection to the other tourists, knowing they had all witnessed the same remarkable ceremony, even as she had experienced her unique, unforgettable encounter. The memory of standing in the guard's path and being guided to safety remained vivid, reminding her of the importance of mindfulness and humility. Walking slowly toward the exit of the plaza, Karen felt a mixture of pride and humility. Pride in having experienced such a historic event firsthand, and humility in recognizing how easily her excitement could have caused an incident. She reflected on the balance between curiosity and respect, realizing that both are essential when exploring new places and encountering new cultures. The royal guards had demonstrated that discipline and dedication are qualities to admire, and Karen felt fortunate to have witnessed their skill and professionalism up close. She knew that this experience would influence how she approached similar situations in the future, always mindful of rules, traditions, and the people around her. Karen's thoughts turned to her friends and family, imagining their reactions when she shared the story. She could already see them laughing at her near disaster, and she smiled at the thought. But she also knew that they would appreciate the lesson she had learned, that respect, patience, and awareness are just as important as curiosity and enthusiasm. The incident had transformed from a moment of fear and embarrassment into a meaningful life lesson, one that combined humor, suspense, and reflection. Karen felt grateful for the opportunity to learn in such a memorable and engaging way. As she made her way through the bustling streets of London, Karen continued to notice the details around her: the architecture, the street performers, the vibrant energy of the city. Every experience now seemed richer, more layered. Because of the lesson she had learned at Buckingham Palace, she felt more aware of her surroundings, more respectful of rules and traditions, and more appreciative of the opportunities to witness history firsthand. The adrenaline and tension of the encounter had given way to a sense of calm reflection, allowing her to enjoy the rest of her day with a deeper understanding and a lighter heart. Karen eventually found a quiet cafe nearby and decided to rest with a cup of tea. She reviewed her photos, smiling at the images that captured the beauty and precision of the royal guards, as well as the subtle moments of humor and tension from her own experience. She realized that photography had allowed her to preserve not just the visual elements of the ceremony, but also the emotions, lessons, and memories associated with it. Each photo was a reminder of her journey from excitement to fear, from relief to admiration, and from embarrassment to understanding. The experience had become a story of growth, curiosity, and reflection, one that she would carry with her long after leaving London. As the day drew to a close, Karen reflected on the broader meaning of her experience. She realized that life often presents unexpected challenges, even in moments of excitement and exploration. These challenges test patience, awareness, and respect, teaching lessons that remain long after the moment has passed. Standing in the guard's path had been a small incident in the grand scheme of her travels, but it had provided profound insights into discipline, professionalism, and the importance of mindfulness. Karen knew that this story would stay with her forever, a reminder that growth often comes from unexpected encounters, and that even mistakes can become valuable lessons. Before leaving the area, Karen took one last look at Buckingham Palace, feeling a mixture of gratitude and awe. She had witnessed one of the world's most famous ceremonies, experienced the thrill of a close encounter with a disciplined guard, and learned an unforgettable lesson about respect and awareness. The memory of the lead guard's unwavering focus, the crowd's reactions, and her own fear and relief would remain vivid in her mind forever. She felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had navigated the situation, learned from it, and come away with not just a story, but a meaningful life lesson. Karen left Buckingham Palace that day with a smile, her mind buzzing with memories and reflections. She had experienced excitement, tension, fear, relief, and awe, all in a matter of moments. The story of her encounter would be shared countless times, each retelling bringing laughter, surprise, and admiration. More importantly, she had learned to balance curiosity with respect, excitement with awareness, and adventure with mindfulness. Her experience had transformed her perspective, not just on travel, but on life itself. It was a story of growth, learning, and unforgettable memories, one that she would carry proudly, wherever she went. As she walked toward the nearest underground station, Karen thought about the many lessons she had learned that day. She realized that sometimes the most powerful experiences come from unexpected challenges. Her encounter with the Royal Guard had been thrilling, frightening, and enlightening all at once. She felt a sense of pride in how she had handled herself, gratitude for the professionalism of the guards, and amusement at the humorous aspects of the incident. Above all, she felt enriched, having gained a story, a memory, and a lesson that would remain with her forever. Karen's trip to London continued, but the encounter at Buckingham Palace had left an indelible mark on her. Every time she recounted the story, she smiled, remembering the fear, excitement, and ultimate lesson she had learned. It was a story that combined suspense, humor, admiration, and reflection, a story that would forever remind her of the balance between curiosity and respect, adventure and mindfulness, excitement and awareness. In the end, Karen knew that this experience had given her more than just memories. It had given her insight, perspective, and a newfound appreciation for the discipline, tradition, and professionalism that made Buckingham Palace and its royal guards truly remarkable.